Today, we're going to be speaking with Her Majesty, the Queen of Rhode Island. She is a brand and marketing expert in the e-commerce space. She's been around the block here with Thrasio. She's worked for Carbon 6. So she really knows her stuff, and I'm excited to pick her brain on how to best expand your brand to other channels, but also what it means to be a brand and what it means to have good content and to increase your, as I like to call it, your customer confidence level. So our guest today is Shannon Curley. Shannon, it's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm excited to have you on. As I'm realizing embarrassingly that my lights back here aren't on. We're gonna keep that in there though. I know everyone likes to see me embarrassed, so I should be very embarrassed. But anyway, nice to meet you. It's nice to have you on. It's nice to talk to you more about a variety of different topics, like I said, mostly surrounding omni-channel and expanding your brand. But I'm really excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, happy to be here for
Yeah.
sure.
Shannon is the Queen of Rhode Island.
That is
But
true. Yeah. Undisputed, no other contenders.
Yes. Yes, I'm telling you, we're gonna put it I'm gonna have to put it in the lower thirds. Like, it's gonna
All
show up
right,
officially on it's gonna be on there.
good.
You're gonna have to let Rhode Island know, let them, let your subjects know. But, no, Shannon is a brand and content marketing expert. And so we're gonna talk today a lot about expanding your brand, omni-channel, and the different ways you can do that and the different strategies. But before we get into that, I do, Shannon, wanna give you a chance to tell us about your rise to the throne, and also your background. I'm just gonna run with this Queen of Rhode Island joke, but I also want to give you a chance to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got your start in the e-commerce world and your experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is the joke that everyone in Rhode Island has either worked at Hasbro, CVS, or Fidelity, and that joke applies to me. I got my career start at Hasbro Toys, so that is where all of the content and brand obsession began. I used to be the brand writer for quote unquote boys license brands, which was Star Wars and Marvel
Oh wow,
and Jurassic Park and Power Rangers and all of the geeky boy brands, which I loved. Um, and I
you're
guess
speaking
that's
my language.
yeah, it's a real crowd pleaser. I have a tattoo of an at from that time
No
of my
way.
life,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
every time someone sees it and recognizes it, I'm like, "There's my person." Like, I get it. We're connected now. But I got my start there, and I mean, in that way, I was always in e-commerce because part of my job there was writing all of the listings for Amazon. Got my start there, and then I ended up leaving Hasbro because I wanted to do more than work within an established brand. If you ever talk to a Star Wars nerd in particular, and I say nerd so endearingly, but if you
Oh
ever
yeah.
talk to a Star Wars nerd in particular, you cannot go outside of canon. Canon is it, and if you do anything else, it is not taken seriously, and that's fine for some people, but for me, I was like, "Man, how boring." How boring to have a world predefined for you in my role. I can't do anything different. I can't break it. I can't, necessarily come up with something new or exciting because I'll have 10 million nerds on my back saying, "Hey, that didn't really happen." And they'd be right. So I left. I ended up moving to a content marketing agency in Boston. While I was there, I started out on the professional services side of things, and I jumped over to creative operations. And then ultimately, I built a role for myself because I wanted to on the pre sales team, pitching creative strategy in the pre sales process to potential clients. Kind of created that role, one, because I really like the sales side of the org. I find it fun. I find it scrappy. I find it a little bit crazy because it is. But two, working on the creative side of things, I saw, like, so often that the reason why we weren't retaining clients was because we weren't delivering on things that sales promised. And so I thought if I can get on the pre-sale side of things and create more strategic, content proposals that aren't really necessarily about volume, but are actually about getting the most value out of what we're doing, then it's less pressure on the creative operations team, better value to the client, and ultimately better retention for sales. And that worked out. It was a great job. I loved it. And then COVID happened, and it was no longer a job because it was made up, which is always the risk of making up your role, is that it's the easiest one to get rid of. And then I spent a year managing a hotel during COVID because during COVID, we all came up with ways to entertain ourselves and deal with social distance. So I managed a hotel for a year. And then I really jumped completely into the deep end on e commerce after that because I worked at Thrasio. So I started at Thrasio, was there for about a year and a half, and then after that ended up at Carbon 6, which was my recent role, director of marketing at Carbon 6, which for folks in the industry who follow along, just got acquired by SPS Commerce back in February.
Right.
And that's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And now we're here to talk to you again about all of really the expertise and the experience that you've built up and um, applying that to expanding your brand and omni-channel, which is, of course, a big topic as it always has been, especially in recent developments with tariffs and with Amazon costs and just all these other things that make it a little bit harder to be profitable on Amazon. To reuse a joke from earlier today that I used. With the upcoming of Easter, the day is Spy Wednesday, the day in the Catholic faith that Jesus was betrayed by Judas and he agreed to hand him over and all that. We're coming up on Easter, so you want to make sure not all your eggs are in one basket. Funny, haha, comedy. So
Yep. Mhm.
So we want to make sure that we're expanding and exploring every opportunity that you can because your competitors are doing it. And if you aren't, you might be missing out on some sales and for a variety of other reasons. So yeah, I'm excited to get into all that with you today. I'd like to go just right into it. Expanding your brand is the name of the game. But that word brand is very unique that it can mean a lot of different things. And I think one of the things that you've said before is that you believe that the brand is going to be the key to a successful expansion. Why? Where is that coming from? Why do you think that is? Can you give me some sort of examples on what you more elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, so people obviously a lot of folks in our space are selling on Amazon, and there's a reason why people shop on Amazon, or a couple of key reasons. It's cheap, it's convenient, it has, really fast delivery. I could order something now and it would be here by the end of the recording, right?
Right.
And that's great, but it's not the same for all e-commerce platforms. So if every platform differs slightly, then what your product needs isn't just a consistent presence across those different platforms, it's a consistent reputation. And that's essentially what a brand is. It's your reputation across all the different platforms. Like Starbucks is a good example. Starbucks is everywhere, right? There's Starbucks on at airports, college campuses, strip malls, Target lobbies. Every location has a different surrounding, but the experience and the product are the same. And
Right.
so you want your brand to work the same way. No matter where your customer is finding you, they should immediately recognize you and trust what you have to offer. So I think that that's really what it comes down to in terms of brand being this longer term investment and this longer term strategy is knowing that wherever you show up, you're going to be recognized.
Right. And I think that's something that we build very strongly, just with coaching some of the brands that we work with, saying like, when eventually maybe you're just on Amazon now, but eventually you want to expand and you want it to be very, like you said with Starbucks, you want it to be very unified across all these different places. So we always say use the content that we make across your social media, target all that stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. It's like I said, it's a very unique word brand because it applies to everybody that has one, and everyone's brand is different. So it's just very interesting to see kind of where that's being taken. Again, with a lot of interesting developments in the last couple of weeks here in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, well, and I think, like, it's hard in the face of a lot of economic uncertainty to think about brand being the thing that you should focus on because brand is, again, it's this like it's just this word that everyone says it's a sticky word, but what does it really mean?
Right.
The thing about a brand is that you have one whether you built it or not. So you do also need to take ownership of it because whether
Yeah.
you built it or not, it exists, it's out there. But when we're talking about a lot of, real financial, economic, real issues that you can put your finger on, it's hard to say like, yeah, but do the brand thing, because it doesn't feel like the same monetized importance, but it is, I think, right now, the reason why brand is such an important strategic focus is because one, again, it's a long-term investment, but two, we know how consumers spend or don't spend money when they are concerned about the economy. So, if you don't have a strong brand, then you're not building that brand trust. And if you're not building brand trust, then we know that customers are not or potential customers aren't going to trust you and therefore they're not going to buy your product. Consumers are more selective when the economy is uncertain, when the economy feels like it's not something that they can predict. So that's where something like brand loyalty comes into play is are you able to build a brand which ultimately brand builds trust, which builds consistency, which builds return customers. So yeah, brand is a little bit fluffy when you just say it out loud, and it seems like kind of a like weird thing to say in response to tariffs and economic uncertainty, but brand is what makes you something that your customer goes back to.
A metric that I think I made up, I think I made up at least the acronym for it,
We know
is
they
I
say
used
85% of metrics are made up.
yeah, right. I call it the CCL when I talk to people that accounts that I audit. It's called the customer confidence level, and it's mostly in relation to how well is your content portraying what your product does. Can it solve their problem? You know, all that, you know, the mumbo jumbo there. But I think that really applies here too. And again, in this time of economic uncertainty, you're right. People are. I didn't even think about that in myself, but people are going to be a lot more selective with what brands they're buying and just what they're buying in general. So yeah, I totally know. I know the importance of a brand, and you know, I like that quote about you have one whether you built it or not. There is a reputation surrounding your products. And it all comes down to are you holding the reins or are you letting the customers hold the reins, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting, very interesting, a very interesting thought. Well, I do want to get into a lot of these different topics surrounding kind of what's going on with this and how can people still focus on growing and building their brand in this time when maybe they should be more worried about their profitability or their efficiency or where to cut costs. But I think that all kind of, I think the answer, and I want you to give your own answer too, but I think the answer you're going to give is something that all comes back to, well, when you cut those costs, how does that affect your brand? But I'm curious to hear if you have any strategies on navigating these rough seas that we're facing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we all talk about AI all the time, and I think this is an area where AI definitely has its place. What I would say is that AI should be your immediate starting point if you're coming up with a brand from scratch. So it is different depending on, does your brand already exist or are you coming up with a brand from scratch? I have talked about this a lot on a couple different podcasts, but also with my team, my old teams. Like, there are parts of the process that AI can replicate or that AI can take care of, but there are parts of the process that you shouldn't trust to that. So if you're building your brand from scratch, for example, don't skip the foundational work and don't skip the human part of that foundational work. What is human is also what is unique. We know that about AI is that it just, you know, creates based on what is already existing. So if you have a unique story, then don't do yourself the disservice of asking AI to tell it for you because it's not going to tell your unique story. At the same time, you know, you spend that time doing the foundational work, building your mission, building your vision, building your point of difference, all of that, and that is really important to just have documented. But once you have that established brand in terms of like content creation and building that consistent reputation and building that consistent brand presence, that's absolutely where you should be leveraging AI and you should be using that constantly to just continue to get your voice out there and continue to get your brand presence established.
Right.
What I usually say is that the best use case for using AI specifically for creative is to do something as a core element that's really, really like a ton of effort, a ton of work, probably your most human centered piece, whether that is an ebook or a really long video or something else, and use that as your piece of foundational content and then repurpose that from there because AI is fantastic for repurposing. I wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
use it for the foundational element, but I would use it for the repurposing element.
Right. It's a great take. That's a great take. It's not something you hear often. I think some people maybe would say, "Oh, I'm just gonna use AI for everything." You know, all of my brand is gonna be AI. I'm just gonna have it build it. I'm maybe gonna have it pick out the name. And I feel like you're right. Until they, it's scary to think about, but until they make an AI that can think on its own and come up with unique stuff, it really is just regurgitating stuff that's already come out. So, yeah, no, very, very, very good take there on this. I'm a little on this side of I'm a little scared to see what AI is going to be in like
I'm
5, 10
I'm scared
years.
too. Yeah.
I, I've seen enough. I've seen enough movies where the AI becomes sentient and takes over, and they don't like us. I just watched. Speaking of nerd stuff, I just watched Age of Ultron the other day
Mhm.
because I love James Spader, and I wanted to see him as Ultron again or hear him, I guess. Um, and it's such a good movie, and it's such a. I really do think that's what's going to happen. I think the AI will spend 2 days on the internet and say, "We got this wrong. Humanity got this wrong. Get them out of here."
Yeah.
So it's very scary. But in
My
any
advice is,
case,
say thank you. I always say thank you when I use AI. Every
I
time I
try.
use an AI prompt, always. I'm
Sometimes I
like,
catch myself doing it, and I don't know, see, that's my thing, though, is that are we enabling them to be, "Okay, you are your own person," by doing that? Or are we just saying, like, "Okay, please don't hurt me when you when you come to life?" I don't know.
I
Is that making
I
them
just
think
think
like, "Oh, I'm a person?"
I don't
I
know,
don't know.
maybe, like, my grandma just impressed the importance of manners on me too much,
Right,
but I'm like, it can't hurt to say thank you. You know,
right.
if the AI takes over, if the bots take over, maybe they'll remember me as
The
the one
Queen
who
of
always
Rhode
said, "Thank
Island
you so much."
was so nice to me. Let's just carve out Rhode Island, just
That's
leave
what
it.
I'm saying. This is my
Just leave it.
safety plan, okay?
I like it. I'm gonna have to start saying thank sometimes I catch myself typing it in, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I
Can you
shouldn't
say
say
no?
that." And
You have
I
to.
don't want them to think that they are I'm saying they now as they're a human. I don't want the AI to think, "Okay, I'm a person." Like, this person says thank you to me, so I must be someone that has a certain value, and I am a person, and I don't know. I don't want them to go down, like, a rabbit hole of it. So sometimes I stop it, sometimes I say it, I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that." But I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting argument there on do you thank AI, and does that make them
It would be a
more
good poll.
human?
I think you should run a
Oh, yeah.
poll and
We'll
see
throw it
what
on
people
LinkedIn and
say.
just say, "Do you thank AI? Do you thank
Yeah.
ChatGPT or any of them after you use them?"
I remember when
Speaking
I was growing up and I had
yeah.
AIM, you know,
Mhm.
AIM, the early days,
Yep.
and there was Smarter Child, and people would just
Yep.
abuse Smarter Child.
Yep.
And when I say people, I mean me. I was like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
my brother's a lot
Absolutely.
bigger and
Same
stronger
thing.
than I am, but I can beat up on Smarter Child. So I don't know, maybe in some way I'm just making up for that. Like I feel bad now
Eh,
because Smarter Child
they
really wasn't
probably
doing
know
anything
that too.
wrong. Yeah.
AI probably knows that you did that too is the scale for
Yeah.
the
So it's
scary
really
part
I'm just
there.
backtracking at this point.
They've got your crimes written down. No, but maybe, I don't know. But on AI, kind of on the idea of content being generated by AI, and really just in general content, when you see a brand with really, really good content and with really, really good marketing, maybe it's AI generated, maybe it's not. What are some signs that say, okay, this content is really doing very well? Aside from, of course, okay, they're getting a lot of sales. What about the content is saying this brand is like going back to our first conversation about trust, or one of our first conversations about trusting the brand? What type of content makes you trust that brand?
Yeah, I think, it sounds really basic, but having a different point of view stands out. Doing something different stands out. Faces stand out. I did this presentation in London a few months ago, and it was called because I like rhymes. It was called Faces and Places, but it was basically the idea
Ooh,
that like that's kind of the marketing strategy that we employed at Carbon Six was just get faces in places. Yeah, and what that means is faces in places across all the different social media platforms, faces in places at all of the different events. We wanted to create a reputation of being everywhere, even if we weren't necessarily, coming out in huge numbers. We wanted to have that reputation. And we did a really great job with that, where we would hear, every event we went to, you guys are everywhere. We wanted that. That's what we built. I think too, I tend to view content as more valuable if I can tell that it's an experiment, that they're trying to do something different. Again, pulling from my own experience at Carbon 6, we did comics. They weren't wildly successful in terms of engagement, but they were just kind of like something fun and different that put a different point of view out there. And the conversations that came out of those were a lot more engaging and a lot more meaningful because the comics showed that we understood something that not necessarily you wouldn't necessarily understand if you weren't in the industry. The comics were making jokes about Amazon's fee increases, or we had one that was with dogs, and it was these two dogs fighting off Amazon fleas, which is just kind of ridiculous, but really
but
funny,
fun.
and it
Yeah.
would create a different conversation than a bot written email that drops in your inbox. So
We
I
can
think,
help you. Yeah. X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like, and some AI you can tell that it was written by AI. I can tell because it's part of my job to do that as someone in marketing and brand and content. Um, I don't think it's necessarily that AI generated content is bad, but I think it's never great. And so there is a difference between good and great.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It's not bad, but it's never great. We definitely see a big difference in the content that you can generate on Amazon with some of their AI tools versus
Mhm.
what we create for our own partners, just on our within our content team, for like ads or for just for anything, any part of the listing. Um, it's like I said, I don't want this to happen, but I know it's going to. When they can start making their own content, maybe it'll be better. But right now, you're right. It's I like that quote. It's not bad, but it's not great.
I
So,
think it also is important to not settle for the first edit from AI. Like,
oh, for sure.
this week there were all of these posts on LinkedIn of, I guess there's a new AI that does a action figure. which, having a lot of friends that, from Hasbro who are designers for actual action figures, it's really been rubbing them the wrong way, really ruffling a lot of feathers. But it's just, you drop in your attributes and a photo of yourself, and it comes up with, your action figure. And I've seen it a million times in the last 3 days because it must have come out on Monday or something. But the one that stands out to me in my mind is the one where someone did that. They did the AI generated action figure, but then they added animation to it, which probably they also did with AI, but it just made it different. So everyone else has this static image of, oh, isn't this clever? Isn't this
Yeah.
fun? It's this action figure. But then one person has one, and all they did was use either one more AI or very basic, animation software, and their action figure walks out of the box. It's not that big of a deal, didn't change that much, but it took it from, "Okay, everyone's doing that," to, "That's different, and I remember that one."
And that's similar to Amazon and other channel content as well of just,
Right, like, the base
can you
content
stand
is
out?
fine, but do
Right.
something a little bit more because it's not
Right.
gonna cost you that much, and it's gonna make a huge difference.
I love that. I love that. Is that kind of what um content sort of means to you? Like what that term and how that helps with building a brand? Is that, you want to stand out. Obviously, everyone wants to stand out and get more views and get more clicks and get more buys. But what does that, the term that we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes here about content, what does that really mean to a brand and what does that mean to you? And really how does it help with building a brand?
Yeah, I forget when content became such a buzzword, but it used to be content. That's how you used to read it.
Right.
Now it's content. But I think content, to your point, yes, it stands out. But I think the bigger significance of something standing out is that it's creating a connection. You don't connect with something that doesn't stand out to you. So content provides meaning. It's anything that adds context. It's what moves your product from being just a product to being a part of a brand. So it's anything from video to blogs to newsletters to social to product images. It just provides meaning. That's what content does. And I think like, when you talk about content and foundational content, which I kind of mentioned earlier of creating one really good thing, it's like I don't know, it's like a snowball. Like when you start building the snowball for a snowman, it's small, and then you start rolling it into more snow, and that's what ends up creating the base of your snowman. But if you rolled that through grass or mud or something like different, then it would be obvious that it was different and not cohesing with your brand. So the role of content is to, I guess, make it a really consistent snowball.
These are great analogies. These are great analogies. No wonder they made you queen.
No,
Um,
I earned it. It was through
yes.
puns and wordplay.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, no, and I know, like, and we talked a lot about unifying your content and across multiple channels. I do wanna get into some of your, thoughts on some of the different marketplaces that are out there right now, and kind of expanding your brand here, but I do wanna put, a sort of a I guess that was a good bow actually for content. I'm gonna leave it there on the snowball bow. So I
You
wanna
can
get
preface
into
the content.
yeah. I'm gonna wrap it up there on the content, but I do wanna get into sort of leaving the comfort zone of Amazon, and leaving the safety net that is Amazon, and expanding to Walmart and Target and Shopify and, more specific niches for your products. What do you think is the biggest mindset shift that brands need to make when they are looking at going omni-channel? What's something that they might not think about, but they need to think about, or something that they're scared of, they should be scared of, but need to approach it a certain way? What do you think is the biggest jump in making the omni-channel shift?
That's a great question. I think, Amazon is different. It's a different platform, and every other platform is different too. And so I think one big mistake would be just treating everything the same. And that's kind of a in a little bit of a way, it feels like a contradiction, right? Because when we're talking about brand, we're talking about consistency, and we're saying like, well, it should be the consistent, it should be the same. That's true. Your brand should be consistent, and your brand should be the same, but it doesn't mean it's going to operate exactly the same across different platforms. So I think one mistake or one pitfall could be treating your product and brand presence the same across all platforms. Every platform operates a little bit differently, so you should think about what the most important aspect of each of those platforms are. I think the other mistake is thinking that your customers would follow you there. Like you're not necessarily going to be able to retract or retain. So depending on how you decide to split your business, you can't assume that customers are going to follow you to new platforms without effort. So if there is a bigger driver for why you want to move on to Shopify or you want to a different channel, is it clear to your customers why, and are they gonna follow you there? So think about that when you're kind of dividing up where you're gonna be putting your efforts. And then the other thing is you want quality across the board. So I think right now, because a lot of people are thinking about jumping to other platforms or diversifying across platforms, they're thinking, well, I better just get my Shopify store set up. If your Shopify store is rushed or whatever store you open is rushed and it doesn't have that same quality, then it's gonna affect your credibility. So you have to adapt to the nuances of each platform, but you also have to treat every new platform as basically a new mini brand launch and approach that with care instead of just kind of going, you know what, I think I'm gonna go on all these other marketplaces now and hope for the best. Like,
Right.
don't do that. It still requires a strategy. Your brand might be the same, but your brand's presence is gonna be different.
Wow, another unique take that I have not heard before. I hear a lot about you wanna make sure that your brand is the same or at least unified, not that's necessarily the same, but your content and your approach is unified so that people recognize it on multiple platforms, and if they go to different spots to see it, they know, "Okay, I know this is this brand." Um, it's a and maybe you're talking more about the strategy that goes into managing the marketplaces and stuff like that, but, um, it's a very, again, it's a take I have not heard before, which just makes it very interesting, to kind of take each marketplace as in its own stride.
I
So
think it's easy to or easier to understand that approach when you think about it for something like if you were doing like launching a new social media strategy, you wouldn't treat Instagram and Facebook and TikTok the same. Like a, 4.5 minute long video on Facebook is going to perform fine, but it's going to not perform at all on TikTok. And a carousel of images might do better on TikTok or on Instagram or LinkedIn than it does on TikTok because TikTok isn't a place where static images live. So it maybe isn't the most immediate instinct to think that that's how your omni-channel strategy should work too for your brand, but the same general logic behind that still plays. People are going to those places for different reasons, so you should meet them where they're at.
and speaking of these, different marketplaces, which one just as, like, a fun little side question, which one do you think is the most underutilized, or which one has the most potential in this day and age? Obviously Amazon's a big one, but what do you think is the most either underused or has the most potential?
Um, I mean, I hate to say Walmart because I hate Walmart, but I really feel like Walmart's gonna be I think Walmart's gonna compete, only because Walmart and Amazon, I think, do share a lot of the same DNA, and I also
Right.
think that we're gonna see a little bit more of a shift towards more brick and mortar businesses too. I think part of what's interesting about the shifts or the trends in consumerism in a tighter economy is that because people are making more informed decisions, they're actually also more likely to go into a store and consider a purchase than buying things online. So I think weirdly, a more traditional quote unquote retailer like Walmart or Target might do all right in all of this. I'd love to say something like Shopify because it's a better platform for entrepreneurs, but realistically, like, everything's a little shaky, it's probably the big guys that are gonna do better.
That's interesting. I would love to see a return to brick and mortar stores. I remember being a kid, and I say that as like I'm like 80, but I'm 25. I remember I remember not very long ago when we were in, like, high school, and the coolest thing to go do was go to, like, the big mall and just walk around and just go into the stores and all that stuff. I Now kids are all on their phones, on their TikTok. Now I sound like I am 80, on their phones all the time, on their TikToks, and their iPads. No,
On their
um
TikToks and Facebooks.
yeah, all of them. But that would be very interesting to see a return to a brick and mortar kind of experience, and you're right, it kinda goes back to my made up metric of the customer confidence level. I think people are gonna wanna be more informed, like you said, but also they wanna have more of an idea of what they're buying, and they can't hold the product in their hand on Amazon, but they can do it in the store. So, that's very unique, that's very
Well,
interesting
we'll
thought, and
see.
yeah, hopefully. I do think Target is the Walmart of, like, a few years ago, and Walmart was really big, and it was like, "Oh my god, I have to be on Walmart, I have to be on Walmart." I think Target is starting to become a little more, like that, where it's like, "Oh, maybe I should get on Target." It's a little harder to get into than Walmart.
Yeah.
Even Walmart's kinda hard to get into, but I think if a brand is at the point where they're looking for ways to grow and they're looking for, "What's my next big project this year?" I think Target could be a good answer as well, but I like Walmart. I don't shop there often, but um, I do think the online platform is they're funny than nothing else. I love it when I think it was 2, 3 years ago when they first did their first, like, Walmart sort of Walmart Prime Day, and it was the
Mhm.
day or 2
Yeah.
before the Amazon Prime Day, and they knew
Yeah.
what they were doing too.
Mhm.
People were all shopped out, and no one wanted to shop anymore, so they stole I'm sure, a lot of Amazon sales. I think they're very funny, and they do that every year. I think it's very funny. They're
Yeah, I
very,
remember that too.
calculated.
We wrote a blog about it. We were like, "Are they
Yeah.
fighting?"
Are they in an argument? Are they gonna break up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, it's very
They were on a
interesting.
break, yeah.
No, but, it's interesting to see just, again, how many, for lack of a better term, how many baskets are out there that you can spread your eggs to, that you can move your business into. Because with this whole tariff thing, Amazon is very costly for all these fees that they have, and they've earned the, I guess, the I don't wanna say the right, but they can charge you all those because they are the best e-commerce platform. They've earned that reputation. But it's hard to combat with all those, especially some of these younger, newer sellers. They can't compete with all those fees. They can't make money on that. So Shopify, Walmart, Target, maybe not Target, but Shopify, Walmart's other like niche platforms could be the move in the next couple of months, next couple of years here.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I think Walmart is quietly sneaking up, sometimes more quiet than others, but I think also having gone to a lot of, industry events over the last couple of years, Walmart is really trying to create a presence as well, and that's gonna make a difference because they're investing in the infrastructure more than Target is.
right, right. And I think there's a lot more. This kind of leads me to my next question. I feel like there's a lot more. Maybe less, of, like, sneaky workaround hacks on Walmart than there is on Amazon, because Amazon has a lot of those. And similar to my last, like, little fun question, hacks or strategies? Do you have one that maybe some hacks are strategies, maybe some strategies are hacks, maybe there's a gray area there, but do you have one that you would recommend for different people in different stages? Do you have one that you would just evergreen recommend, hacks or strategies? What's your take there on these different things?
Yeah, I mean, hacks are short-term wins, I think, and strategy is a long-term win. My concrete, immediate hack that I use all the time, utilizing AI is if you have ideas or things that you need done that AI can accomplish for you, record yourself talking about it and then submit that to AI and ask AI to make sense of your voice note. I leave voice notes for myself all the time, and then I will update them to GPT-4 and say, "Hey, here was my idea. What did I say? Pitch it back to me, make sure it made sense," and I
Right.
use it as a sounding board, but I don't think a lot of people use the voice element of, GPT in particular in this example, but that is my, like, life hack that I use for everything, is I record myself talking, and then I send it into GPT and ask it to make sense of what I'm talking about.
Huh. I'm learning a lot today.
I'm so glad, and it
This
didn't
is a
make me
great
cringe or
episode.
nothing.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. I never knew that you could do that. I guess I did always see the record button, like, you could talk to do you talk right into the GPT, or do you record it and on somewhere else and then submit it to the
You can do both.
Hmm,
So another thing that I've done with that same sort of strategy is, or same hack, I should say, is a lot of times on Slack, I will get messages from people
mm,
that are voice memos because, as you know, it is easier to drop a voice memo than it is to type something out.
yep.
So I can download the voice memo and drop that into GPT and say, "Hey, they rambled for 5.5 minutes. What was the point?" And GPT will say, "Oh, they just want you to update the newsletter." I'm
It's
like,
okay, thanks. That was yeah. Yeah,
"Big
sometimes
deal."
that, yeah, I can relate to that a little bit too. Where I'm like, "Just tell me what you want. Just tell me
Yeah,
what you need from me,
it's
please."
really helpful. It saved me a lot of time, and it's distilled a lot of information for me because the flip side of a voice memo theoretically being more efficient is that it's almost certainly more rambly. So I use AI to get rid of the ramble, basically.
Right, you're just, what's that word? Like, brain dumping or
Yeah, yeah,
something like
stream of
that, I don't know.
consciousness
And
is
for all of
the
my Velocity coworkers that loyally watch the show, I'm not talking about you, I promise. It's
definitely
another
not, no.
different agency.
Someone else
Different
entirely. Yeah.
different people entirely, yeah. Different, not even just for Slack, but just for I wish I could do that on, like, iMessage. Just be like, someone sent me a long text, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Just tell me what do you want? Just tell me what you want, please."
Yeah, just
Or
tell
call
me.
me, even call me, I don't even ugh, anyway. No, but yeah, it's interesting going into these different platforms of just seeing. I'm curious to see when we start to add more people as Target starts to grow, as Walmart starts to grow, as Shopify's been growing and still continues to grow. But as these other maybe a new player that we don't even know about yet maybe comes out in 3 years and says, "Oh, you can sell stuff on my platform." Timu even, as we start to grow in these different areas, I'm curious to see the different kind of like Kevin King style hacks that come out that are like, oh, if you do this, you can capture their email and then you can
Mhm.
you can overthrow the government in Rhode Island or not the government. I have to cut that there, but I don't want the FBI on me. No, we might be able to, you might be able to just grow super exponentially and capture emails and do this and that, even though they don't want you to, and increase conversions. I'm excited to see where that comes into it as far as the hacks go, because I do think some of them are interesting, but
Yeah, well, I think that's, the question of hacks versus strategy, though. It's like
right,
that's why hacks are not reliable
right,
because the same hacks, obviously, that are being used in the Amazon space are not the same hacks that are gonna be applicable in any other platform.
right,
So, strategy, I think, is a multi-channel tool.
right,
Having a brand strategy will serve you across all of your different channels. Having a hack will probably only serve you in one. Um, I mean, even just looking at the ways that, like, Amazon algorithms have changed over the last few years, a hack that someone gave you a year ago probably doesn't apply the same way now.
yeah,
Just that's just the nature of the game is that everything's always shifting. So hacks expire and strategies don't, I guess, is the
right,
long
right. There you go.
story short.
Yeah, I'm remembering now a video about a guy talking about sauce versus juice. He's like, sauce lasts you a long time. Juice goes bad in a week. So you want sauce. You don't want juice. I don't know what the video was, but that was what the point of what he was saying was. You want to make it long lasting and not just short term. Maybe something I think it's something to do with happiness. It's like you want long term happiness versus like a quick short term something or other. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's
Sauce
like
and
the
juice.
fads and trends thing, right?
Right.
Like fads are fleeting, trends
Right.
last longer, but they can still fade. And then actually I don't even remember what there's a third one. Is it mega trend? I think it's mega trend.
That sounds right.
Yeah, which is a dumb word and probably should just be called strategy, but fads, trends,
Something
and
anything
then
better.
mega
Yeah.
trends. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it kind of speaking on the topic of longevity, it brings me to my next great question. That it is you talk a lot about your experience with Thrasio and with Carbon 6. So you've been in the game for a while with these big names. What keeps you working here? What keeps you going? And a lot of people that bow out after a few years of Amazon say, I can't take it anymore. I don't want to do it. I want to go just into regular marketing. I want to sell cars. I want to open a lemonade stand. Other industries. What keeps Shannon Curley in the e-commerce space?
I like that it's always changing. I think that's a challenge. It's a shifting landscape all the time. So maybe I like that hacks are not permanent in the space. I like that you always have to be coming up with new ideas. I think I've stayed in this space and gravitated towards it because I think it's a really unique place for entrepreneurs to find success. And I think it's also built for in a unique way to help those, solopreneurs become really successful in a way that other industries maybe aren't. My I always say this because I'm talking to, like, family members and stuff who don't understand what you do,
Right.
which is one of my favorite exercises, by the way,
Ugh.
is, like, to ask my family, like, "Say it back to me. What's my job?"
Yeah.
But I always say to them that one thing that's funny about this space is the way that people come into their success because, you look at, like, an Aaron Cordovas who became well known for a lemon squeezer. Like,
Right.
what a weird thing. Like, what an
Right.
odd thing to become super successful off of, but there's so many stories of that, and I know so many people in the industry are cagey about talking about what they sell or what category they're in, and that's fine, but the truth is, like, you're still selling at the end of the day, probably something kind of boring and uninspiring, and you're making it inspiring. But I think the thing about that too is that because, maybe the product that you're working on isn't the sexiest or most exciting thing in the world, there's so much more effort put into things like building a brand and telling a story and becoming an expert and becoming the go-to and becoming the Kevin King or becoming the person that people rely on. And I think that's really interesting when the thing that's making you money isn't necessarily the thing that's making you known. Like, I think that's really interesting about this space, and I think that over the, past few years that I've been really deeply involved in this e-commerce community, that's something that's always impressed me and kept me sort of delighted is just seeing the ways in which people are always reinventing themselves because their product is kind of the same, but the way that they sell it is always different.
Another great answer. I mean, these answers have been great. It is a very awesome episode so far. I do want to finish out with the question I like to ask all my guests. What's next? What's next for e-commerce? What should sellers be on the lookout for? What's next for you, and what's your plan, and like what's going on? And yeah, like really just what's next in the industry.
Yeah. Industry, I mean, no surprise, we're gonna continue to see AI develop over and over again. I think what's gonna be very interesting is seeing how consumers react to the use of AI. I think, there's been all these new, especially, like, with generative AI, new creative, it's a lot of, like, "Isn't this great? It's so easy." But I can tell that it's made by AI, and it's not offensively made by AI, but it is,
Right.
and I'm curious to see how consumer trends are going to shift with as more people become aware of the ways in which generative AI is being used. So that'll be something interesting to keep a pulse on. Again, I think this conversation has been around brand and building trust and building reliability, and I think that's inevitable that those things are gonna become more important in times of economic uncertainty. So again, focusing on that aspect of things to start building a brand that people believe in, that's what keeps people coming back to you, but it's also what gets people to look for you, is building something that's different and sets you apart. And then for me, I just left Carbon 6 a few weeks ago. I'm currently seeking out my next opportunity, whatever that looks like. Right now, I'm excited and eager to continue working in this space and do that, brand and marketing and brand and content consulting work and just find more brands and businesses and people, frankly, to get excited about. So that's what's next for me and just see where the wave goes next and try to ride it.
Love it. I've made a lot of ocean analogies today. A lot of like the
Well, it's
shifting
because the
tides
the
and
ocean state is Rhode Island, and so I've
right.
actually just been subliminally influencing you to be really excited about Rhode Island.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I did visit a while ago. We saw the breakers, and the different mansions there. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful state.
Just yeah.
And of course you can't beat the seafood there. So,
No.
yeah, we'll definitely be back one way or another. So, we'll check out the Hasbro factory and the CVS headquarters and
Yeah.
Fidelity.
And Fidelity, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Those are
check
all
out
the
the
key
different
ones. Yeah,
headquarters.
everything else is whatever.
Yeah. We I feel like we saw a different, there was a lot of interesting companies out there, but obviously those are the big 3, but we had a lot of good food when we were out there, so, I'll be excited to hit some of those restaurants up again, but
Yeah, the culinary scene here is amazing because
yeah.
Johnson& and Wales Culinary School is in Providence, so a lot of
Oh,
the graduates open restaurants in Providence before they go on to bigger and better cities, but they'll
to, like,
start their
France.
seed
Huh.
restaurants here, and we get them for cheap, and it's the best.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I'll have to keep that in mind next time.
yeah.
We'll have to talk, food wrecks for the next time I visit, so well, Shannon, I wanna thank you for coming on and for being a guest. This has been an amazing episode. I said I've definitely learned a lot. I'm gonna try out a lot of these hacks or these, strategies, uh,
Yeah, rock
especially
it.
the GTP one. I wanna thank you for, again, just being a guest and for talking to us all about brands and just omni-channel growing and how to really build that, customer confidence level. So,
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
happy to be here.
Thank you all for watching. I will have Shannon's LinkedIn and potentially another other promotional websites down below in the description. Make sure to check it out. Make sure to give her a connection request or a follow. Add her on LinkedIn. And thank you all for watching. I am your host, Velocity Pete, and we will see you next week.